So welcome everybody to our session, Inclusive Co-Design, Unlocking Innovation with People. And that's something that I personally am very, very passionate about. And I think you're really going to hear some fantastic examples from the three projects that we've got here today. I'm Alex Mitchell, and I'm a Programme Manager for the UK National Innovation Centre for Ageing. And I lead our national and international Voice citizen community. For 15 years, our Voice members have been working with businesses, innovators, researchers, policymakers to co-design, to co-develop new solutions, new products, new services to support healthy longevity through the life course. And what Voice members do is they help businesses to identify those unmet needs, but also their aspirations. And I think that's really key, and I think it's really it'll be demonstrated when you hear about the project here today. Because what we want to do is know what people don't just need to live well, but what do they want in order to thrive in later life. So, we've got four fantastic speakers, all of whom have meaningfully involved citizens in the co-design of their products or services. And they'll really show that co-design is not just something that you do want in a tokenistic way. It really adds massive value. It de-risks your innovation. And frankly, I've been working in the space for 7 years now. It's a really enjoyable aspect of the innovation process that I really encourage you all to embark on. So it's my pleasure to introduce everyone today. So we have Professor Sarah Ketley, who is co-design lead on the Healthier Working Lives project, and with us Dr. Luis Suarez. We have Dr. Ada Suarez-Gonzalez, who is the principal investigator for Making Reading Real, which is the team behind Read Clear. And we have Dr. Daniela Mercado-Bavide, Director of Content, Research and User Experience at Holly Health. So time is very short, and I think the hordes will be banging on the door for lunch at 20 to 1. So let's get going. We're going to save questions until the end, but I really encourage you to submit them through Slido, and we'll get through as many as possible. So first up, we have Sarah and Luis, and they're about to tell you about a really interesting program which assesses the challenges and the opportunities for the over 50s care workforce. So over to you two. Thank you.
So, thank you very much indeed. And let's see if the slides work. Yeah, okay. So, we're going to race through this. There's so much we could talk about, I think, like every project. Thank you very much for the introduction and the invitation to be here. If you have a look at our project website, you will find the details of the funding from the SBDRP, UKRI, and our project partners as well, who you can see here, and the key aims of the project, as well as keywords, for example. So it's quite an extensive collection of disciplines and people, and we're trying to cross over between the workforce themselves, academia, and the entrepreneurial community to really make some positive change for the workforce in the care environment. I would say particularly in Scotland, but we are partners as well with Legal & General, and we'll be adding a retirement village as well to our case study approach in the new year, we hope. So we're really looking at trying to help with basically the crisis in the care home workforce at the moment, to increase the ability of the workforce to stay in their jobs despite all the pressures that they're facing, and to enable the sector to recruit more easily into that workforce in the first place as well. So those are our major goals. To do that, we are taking quite a comprehensive co-design process. And what we are really focusing on is making the co-design process as accessible as possible, and trying to take a kind of scenario planning approach to this, because obviously we all started these projects during COVID, and we're now facing other iterative crises that affect our participants' ability to actually engage with the work at all. Getting through the door, as we've heard already during this conference, is quite an achievement in itself. Maintaining and building that relationship is then another challenge after that. So this green box that you can see here, it looks like a bunch of fuzzy felt stickers. This is us thinking about what kind of capacity do we have as a team to work with a certain number of care homes. So the way we're organising this is offering 6 care homes across Scotland an opportunity to engage with co-design across a period of up to 6 months. And within that time, each of those care homes will be able to undertake about 5 activities that are tailored to them, and we'll get onto that in a minute. And as I said, we will be sort of rolling out into one retirement village as well in England. As well as this, we're working with Scottish Care, large membership organisation for the sector, and so we've been hearing from them and through our knowledge network as well, all the work that they've previously done. We're not starting from scratch. We know that there's 2 or 3 major thematic issues that are already being researched, and we want to build on that and use those networks. So we are also building in work on things like a role for change makers in care. Now, we've been using up till quite recently the word intrapreneur. It's too narrow. We're thinking about change making in a larger context. We know that there's a need for a professional college for care workers, just as there is for nurses. That doesn't yet exist. And we're also interested, like some of the other projects here that have co-design in them, in extending how co-design is thought of and applied across this sector, but also others. So really looking at, can we extend that into, say, commissioning processes as well. And I'm going to hand over to Lewis, who is our research associate, to talk to you about the Ripple framework. And that is how we are framing all of our methods. So if you'd like to come up, Lewis?
Yep, of course. Thank you. So early in the beginning of this process, we started to look ahead and try to make sense how we could approach this, and mainly facing so many complexities, and we were not sure that we would be able at a given moment to keep doing the work, because mainly COVID might lock the doors and we cannot gain access. So we start to think in ways of doing this, and we come up with something that we call the Ripple framework. And the Ripple framework is a curation of 30 design and management business tools, which will allow us to progress at any given moment if we face any kind of barrier going in this direction, and we could just escape and go towards this side, which means that we will never get stuck. We have tried, and we can just play the video how it plays. So it's made of 5 segments, and each of the segments take us from a journey from observation, where we will find classic methods in social science such as ethnography, until more innovative and radical methods in design such as Lego serious plays. And we tend to see our core researchers as different actors in a given moment, and according with the method that we are delivering. They can be players. Last week we had an amazing session with them where they become players because we were playing with card sorting, so each of them are players. Soon they will be constructors. They will have hats with different colors. We will use the 6 hats approach, and each of them will have a special superpower that they will need to bring into the table and to negotiate how they're going to progress with the activity. We are basing each of the design process or the design path for each of the care home. We based in the previous activity, where we will extract information, the words that they have given to us. We will transform this in the next activity. It could be card sorting, and they will acknowledge and recognize the words that they have there, their words, and they make it easier for them to rethink about the things and to keep going ahead. Yep, Sarah?
Thank you very much. So we're going to hand backwards and forwards a little bit to each other, but just to show you that we ended up with this matrix of potential activities and methods. So these are the 30 activities that Lewis mentioned, whittled down from about 60. There are a lot of different things you can do within the co-design area. But the important thing is to note that we curated these for a reason. Some of them are very kind of soft, the soft edges of co-design, introductory, observational, relationship building, and they build towards a kind of pivot point from that relationship building towards a really generative process of research, actually, which is a shift for social science approaches. So one of the things that we want to emphasize here is the idea that design has dealt a lot with complexity in defining problems. It has dealt less with complexity in how we imagine solutions, and we want to recognize as part of this project that solutions might be too narrow a term, and to really look at how they can be quite complex as well. Now, to give you an example of what happens for a particular care home, they don't have to do all of these methods. That would just be a nonsense. What we do is we work with them to co-produce a pathway through it. So it's like a care pathway for the particular care home, but it's a co-design pathway. So you can see in the kind of graded greys and blues here that we start with what's called a walk-around, an ethnographic observational method, and we go into something called a poster probe. That's the same for each home. After that, the methods start to diversify, and it's an iterative process. And we build on what they tell us in the previous activity to tailor the next activity to what we think both pragmatically that suits them, but also in terms of the themes that they're interested in and focusing on. So this is an example of a poster probe that we've developed. You can see there's spaces on it for people to write, draw, feedback, put stickers on. And what we're doing here is introducing entrepreneurial ideas into the care homes to get them used to the idea that they're going to become entrepreneurs too effectively at whatever scale suits them. And Lewis,
yeah. This is another example of what Sarah just mentioned. So any method will give us a partial feedback, and this is where we will tailor the pathway. And this will be done from a matrix of possible activities, and we will be offering different co-design approach for each of the care homes. So it's very specific. It's very specific for each of them, and it keeps changing. It keeps changing. We could get inside with one idea, and we get out of there with a different idea, with the direction that this may take.
So this is just an example of how that matrix is used to plan for instances where we might not be able to get into a certain care home, where they have a crisis of staffing, whether they're losing staff, or if they're a very remote home. We can start to look at which of these methods is the most appropriate for each of our care homes.
Yeah, back to the co-design journey. Let's have a look at what happens for a particular care home. So these are two examples, cards that we have specifically developed for this one, and this is for the performative narrative interview, which we extract information from the early stage, and we develop this material which gives us opportunity to extract more information and to move towards the next stage in the co-design pathway. Yes, we have some more examples here. This one is the Circle of Care, and which was recently delivered in one of the care homes, and where we're already managing some findings. Okay, another example, and time is running fast. Sarah, probably you will need to wrap up.
Yep. Okay, so I'll take over this one. So this is all these last three slides, the Circle of Care that you saw in the performative narrative interviews, were one care home engaging through these steps with different activities. And we're sort of coming down those darker greys now, pivoting towards them defining through all of that activity what they want to focus on going forward and what they actually want to develop a project plan for going forward. After this, we will put them in touch with entrepreneurs and mentorship and help them apply for funding to take projects forward. But in terms of impact as well, we're seeing the change in individuals, the kind of increase of the feeling of agency and power that they have to actually express ideas within this process. And we heard in the last session about co-design as a process of care practice in its own right, and that's what we're experiencing. So we fully intend to be looking at different scales of impact as a result of this, including personal change for individuals. And so just to summarize, Participants' own words are fed into following activities, so nothing is surprising. It becomes increasingly tailored and personalised to the experience of that particular team. Throughout, the structure of activities means that participants are working more and more closely with their own material and can nuance and amplify their voices. Finally, to be able to prioritise and scope and take action on their own situations going forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah Newish. So next up, we have Dr. Ada Suarez-Gonzalez of Making Reading Real. Their solution, Read Clear, is an evidence-based reading aid for those who have brain-related visual difficulties resulting from neurological conditions. And what's really interesting about Ada's co-design journey is that you actively involve people living with dementia or living with the effects of a stroke. So, Ada, please tell us more.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here today sharing a space with my fellow speakers and with all of you, and having the opportunity to share my personal journey through inclusive co-design. My name is Aida Suarez-Gonzalez. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist at University College London, and my slide is not full of typos. There is nothing wrong with my slide. This is what happened to your reading when your brain stops working correctly and interpreting the information coming from the eyes. And this is usually due to damage in the back of the brain, which is the area that processes vision. This very specific brain-related visual impairment potentially affects 24 million stroke survivors in the world and more than 4 million people living with dementia and brain-related visual difficulties. And these people cannot benefit from assistive technology devices to support their reading currently available in the market because they are not tailored to their needs, because these devices are usually designed for people with eye disease or developmental dyslexia. That's why we created Read Clear. Read Clear is an evidence-based reading aid tailored to the needs of people with brain-related visual impairment. Read Clear can alleviate visual crowding and visual disorientation. Visual crowding is when lines and words clutter up together, as you saw in my first slide, and visual disorientation is what makes you getting lost on the page when reading. Read Clear was developed from beginning to end with the collaboration of a group of people living with a very rare type of dementia that affects vision called posterior cortical atrophy, or PCA. In the Dementia Research Center, where I work, we've been collaborating with people with PCA for many years now. So when we started working on Read Clear, we went to our PCA support groups that we coordinate, and we asked members if they wanted to help with the design of this tool. And a group of them volunteered, and they became our co-design partners. So together with them, I embarked on a 9-month journey of inclusive co-design that took me to travel all around England, beautiful country, by the way, to visit all these participants in their homes. And I will take a tablet with me with the app installed, and I will be there sitting in their living room while they were interacting with the app, and I will be taking my notes, and we will be brainstorming together and growing this together. And what I would like to share with you today are 3 stories, so 3 anecdotes that I lived in these living rooms and that led to 3 innovations, 3 features that you can see in this app. The first one is this little highlighter here that makes the line to stand up. What happens is that we call this a reading ruler because of the following story. When I was in the living rooms of our participants and we will be discussing the reading difficulties, people will also show me about the strategies that they were using to support their reading. So they will open a drawer and they will pull out a line marker, like the one that you are seeing here in the screen, or a homemade version of it, like with a piece of paper and a hole in it, or just a simple ruler, and they will show me how they were using a simple ruler to support their reading. So we just borrowed this idea and we translated it into something digital that could be embedded in the app. And that is how we decided that we should include this feature in the app, because they were actually telling us this. And there is something else that you may be noticing in this reader, which is that the rest of the text is grayed out. And this takes me to my second story, the peripheral text. So when testing the reading ruler, some of our participants will say, yeah, this helps, but actually the rest of the text still interferes too much with my reading and it crowds a lot. So we decided to remove the rest of the text. And this worked fine for some people, but not for others. Other people said to me, Aida, you know, this is actually a very artificial way of reading. It's very orthopedic, it's very weird. It takes away all the pleasure of reading. All the pleasure of reading. I haven't been thinking about the pleasure of reading because I was so obsessed about boosting reading accuracy. So I asked them how I could improve this. And they said, well, how about we meet halfway? How about you leave the text, but you gray it out? So you leave the text, and I still feel that I'm reading a real page, but you grayed out the text, so the font doesn't interfere that much with my reading. And this is how we decided to create this feature, and that can be tailored and customized to these 3 different modes to meet the needs of a wide variety of people. And the last story, so I've saved the best story for last. This is my favorite anecdote. It is what we call the mystery of the migrating finger. And this started a beautiful morning in the Cotswolds, in this beautiful cottage. I was visiting this couple. They were co-design partners. She had PCA, and she was beautifully supported by her husband. And she was interacting with the app, but she was using her index finger as a pointer, which is a very common strategy in people who get lost on the page. The problem is that when you use your finger as a pointer on a touching screen, bad things happen. Like you end up in a different page or in a different part of the app, and this was happening to her. So we decided to disable the screen so she could interact safely with it. But she kept using her finger as a marker. And the problem is that because of her visual difficulties, her finger will keep landing on the wrong place on the page, making her reading very frustrating. So I tried to dissuade her from keep doing this, but her habit was so strong that she couldn't help it. She couldn't stop doing it. And I got stuck. I really didn't know what else to do to solve this issue. And then her husband had this fantastic idea. And he said, how about you hold the tablet with both hands on landscape position, so you prevent your index finger from migrating into the screen. And this proved to be a very effective behavior modification technique. And that is why Read Clear is to be used on landscape mode. And these are my 3 stories. So thank you very much for giving me this space. And before I finish, something that I would like to emphasize is that these people who helped me with the design, who helped all my team with the design, they were living with dementia, and still they made a magnificent and meaningful contribution. And this is a very important lesson for everybody to remember, that our prejudices about the progressive nature of neurodegenerative conditions should never become a barrier for inclusion and innovation, because we humans are much more than the things that happen to us, and we are much more than the conditions we live with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ada. I think the main thing that I took away from that is when you talked about reading being something that is pleasurable. It's one of life's pleasures, and that innovation should not just be functional. It should enable us and empower us to live life to the fullest for as long as possible. So thank you very much. Next up, we have Dr. Daniela Mercado-Bevide from Holly Health. And Holly Health is a digital health and well-being coach. that supports personalised habit-forming behaviour change for physical and mental health. Absolutely fascinated by this area, so Daniela, if you could tell us a little bit more. Thank you.
Sorry. Have an extra minute, yes. Thank you, Aida. Hi, everyone. I am Daniela. I'm Director of Content, Research, and User Experience, a bit of a mouthful, at Holy Health. Oh. Yes. Yes, Holy Health is basically an app, a digital health coach for physical and mental well-being. And today I am going to present to you this project that we're doing in partnership with HUK, Lewisham and Southwark, which mainly is to kind of take the Holy Health service as it is and tailor it and make it better for older adults. I should say with older adults instead. Just a bit of a map of what we're going to be going through this short talk. So I'll give you a bit of a project overview, what we're doing, and then I'm going to dive deeper into the main co-design methods that we're using. I'm going to be focusing on 3 of them, and a bit of actions and progress that we've taken so far, and then we'll move on to some questions. Oh, I should probably skip this slide actually, because, and this one, sorry, short time. So this is just an overview of the project. So we are about 6 months in of an 18-month project, and let me skip back to the vision. So our vision is to support older adults with relevant personalized coaching when they need it to reduce sedentary behaviors and improve quality of life. Sorry about the backing and forth. So here I'm just kind of mentioning a few of the co-design methods that we're going through, and I'm going to be focusing on our focus groups, our user calls, just interviews, and our intensive pilot. But we're also we're forming a healthy aging panel, and we have an ongoing loop of written feedback. So let's begin with our focus groups. So together with HUK, we kind of went to their day center. We had 5 focus groups with 20 attendees, but actually 26 engagements. So a couple of people went there more than once because they had so much fun. We had a variety of male and female, a wide range of ages from 56 to 90 years old, and a wide variety of ethnicities. And the first 3 groups were kind of talking about health challenges, engaging with technology, that kind of thing. And we have 2 kind of sessions with the actual app and people using it and going through any hurdles, any kind of sticky points that we could then address later on. This is just kind of, we had an enjoyment scale at the end of each focus group just to say how much people actually enjoyed taking part. We got a 4.2 score out of 5, so not bad, and some really nice quotes from people. Let's move on to another kind of stream of feedback that we're using. So this is user interviews. And so far we've done over 30 feedback calls, so 30-minute interviews, semi-structured interviews. And this is with older adults, people over 50, who are already engaging with the Holy Health service to kind of go through their health challenges, but also their experience and how we can make it even better. So a few key themes have popped up quite a lot. So people kind of want a community feature. They want to interact with other people, peers that are going through similar things. They also want more content recommendations that feel personalized to them and they feel relevant to the condition. And extra support using the app because, as we thought it was easy and, very self-explanatory, but it turns out it isn't. So this was a great learning, and I'm going to go through kind of specific things that we've been addressing. Another really nice quote, I'm not going to read it all, but really worthwhile, enjoyable experience, so lucky to be taking part of this, which is always really nice to hear. This is just to kind of showcase a bit of the processes that we take after looking at the transcripts of these interviews. So we do a bit of a thematic analysis, and we've identified 175 pieces of feedback, 68 suggestions, and we kind of channel that across 7 themes. So from content, just design, user experience, the Holy Bird chat, which is our digital health coach, and just other suggestions. I'm probably going to skip this slide as well because it's a bit long, but this is just to exemplify how we take every single piece of feedback and then we map it across our kind of roadmap of the service. And we've already addressed a few of these points, and more other points are in the roadmap that take a little bit more time. Right, and then the third part of our kind of feedback loop is our intensive pilot, which is essentially a mini research project within a wider research project. So we've recruited all the adults to take part in this 12-week project, which is basically using the app for 12 weeks in a quite intensive way, so we can suggest it at least three times a week. And then we have a few check-up points along the way. So on week 1, people go through an onboarding process. They start answering a few questions like health surveys, and then continue using the app. At week 4, we have our first feedback call just to see how they're getting on, how they're feeling in terms of their goals, and just general feedback. Week 8, we do the same health questionnaires that they did at baseline, so we're taking a bit of a quantitative approach as well as qualitative, so we can measure change scores. And then at week 12, the same health questionnaires, more feedback, and another feedback call. So it's quite intense. We're kind of like working quite closely together in this, and it's really exciting. And at the end of the project, we compensate with £50 voucher just for their time and effort. And on top of these kind of qualitative and quantitative outcomes, we're also closely monitoring engagement with the service, what they do, what they don't do, how often they use it, that kind of thing. And just to say that for recruitment for this pilot, we've been reaching out to lots of communities, groups, kind of events, as well as social media, newsletters, that kind of thing, so to make sure that we are reaching as far as wide as we can and we get a nice variety of people. So the progress so far with our pilot, we're in week 10. I think actually, since I made these slides, maybe 11 at this point. We have 47 people taking part. Our goal was to have 30, so we're doing quite well. We have 31 who are power users, so they're using the app more than 3 times a week, which is great. We've had 20 week 4 calls so far, so 30-minute feedback calls, and we have quite a low dropout rate, so around 6% of people. And here I'm just exemplifying a few of the features that we're testing within the pilot. So our onboarding process, we are taking what it was before, so kind of going through onboarding using the app, and then took that on a web version. So it's a wider screen, bigger screen, and we're just seeing if there's any difference in that and if people find that more accessible. And we also have push notifications as habit reminders, which is kind of the usual path that we are taking or had taken before, and comparing that to SMS messages, which arguably is more accessible and familiar. Again, I'm not going to go through a lot of detail on this, but it's really nice to see on our week 4 feedback calls, 92% of our users are saying that they are taking more actions to take care of their health and they're feeling better. We have a 4.2 enjoyment scale out of 5, which is doing great. And these are a few of the kind of both positive comments of what people are enjoying, so they're enjoying habits, they're enjoying kind of marking the habits as done, and then constructive comments of what they like to see in there, and I'm going to go through a few examples of those. More nice quotes that unfortunately don't have a lot of time. But so yeah, this is a bit of an example of what we're taking from the feedback, so across all of these streams of feedback, the challenges that we're seeing and how we're addressing them within the service. So for example, there was, as I said before, there was confusion of what to do with the app, what were the features that I meant to be using, which then we introduced a video, very clear examples of, okay, this is Holy Health, these are the few steps that you need to follow, that kind of thing. We're also creating a PDF, so it's also at hand when people need it, because we know that a video sometimes is like, oh, I don't know, and you need to read it. And then I'm going to move forwards. So people were asking for a way to report their mood, so we've introduced a mood tracker within the service, which is working really well. A few more bits and pieces, so people wanted to get tailored recommendations according to any medical conditions that they might have. So we introduced the ability to report any medical conditions and mobility issues at onboarding, and then we've also introduced disease-specific content. Here is a similar kind of vibe, so people wanted tailored recommendations and activities based on their mobility issues or abilities. So we've introduced low mobility videos, as well as disease-specific content, condition-specific content, but also our habits are tailored for older adults even more now. So things to kind of manage long-term conditions, low mobility, but also isolation, loneliness, and just social connection. But we've also realized, actually, that obviously the videos, when they're in the app, they might be quite small. So we're taking this step to send email campaigns with those videos to the relevant people so they can see it on the web, and it's actually more accessible. And people are already responding, saying that they're enjoying it and they find this really helpful. And together with our partner Vitality, which is in the audience today, we're creating even more content based on feedback and kind of what people say that they want to see there. So more pelvic floor exercises, dance, they wanted something fun to dance to and follow, weight-based resistance exercises, Pilates, and more seated exercises that feel more accessible. So, next steps. Oh, I'm out of time. Okay, so we'll continue with our pilot until early 23. We're also forming our healthy aging panel. We're also already gathering data and insights for our community feature. That is a big part of what's coming next year. Continue iterating the product, and then we'll scale up to provide the service to as many people as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is my lapel mic kicked in? Yes, fantastic. So thank you all. Time is tight, so we've just got time for a few questions. Please do keep submitting them on Slido, though, and our panelists can log in and answer them throughout the day. I want to come to Sarah and Lewis first. I'm always interested in how different communities perceive the co-design process, because I think a lot of people think that they turn up, you may or may not take on board their comments, and then what next? So how did the older care workers perceive that co-design process? Were they apprehensive? Were they aware of the potential impact that it would have on their lives?
Mm-hmm. You want to start, Sarah?
Sure. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think we're all kind of so embedded in our own disciplines. We end up using terminology that to us is not jargon, but to everybody else absolutely is. It takes quite a lot of work to try and design that out, to step out, to test it as well. So, I mean, you might have noticed that we used the words methods, but we also used the word activities, and we found we had to shift from methods to activities because we're also researchers. We're doing research through this process. So we thought, you know, as researchers, we're like, well, surely we have to tell people that we're about to do co-design. Maybe that's surely the ethical way to approach it and get permission to do it. But in fact, that just introduces a whole discussion about what it is and raises anxiety about what it is and what role people have to play. The idea that you might have to be creative, and that's a really judgmental thing in the UK for all sorts of reasons. So in fact, we would just introduce low-key activities and at the end say that was an example of a co-design activity. You know, if you want to continue, we will bring more to you and build them around you. In terms of expectations about the outcomes, I don't know if you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think that the expectation is always high, and that is a responsibility then for us in how we can respond in a way that we can satisfy this huge curiosity of what is coming out of what I have just done. But I think that the key issue here is the people have opportunity to get their hands dirty and to put hands into the thing and start to making the things. And these somehow bring the expectations down, but it's not because he has not been satisfied, it is because they have done it. And this is the way we approach the co-design, and we took this word, the co-design, out of the process and not trying to explain, because there is no words that you can use to explain what co-design is, because the world is in the making, and today is this, tomorrow is going to be that. But the activity they experience is something that they take with them, and this is the way that we have approached and we have used so far, and it has been great.
Fantastic. And you're right, I think everyone in this room will have a slightly different idea of what co-design is. So yes, absolutely managing the expectations of the citizens that you're involving is key. And what you touched on there was about tailoring the activities to the communities that you're involving. So, Ada, what I'm really interested in is how did we constantly at Voice get questions around if we're involving people living with dementia, with the effect of the stroke, what do they need to consider? So, what would you say to innovators who are starting that co-design journey, who are going to be involving people living with dementia? What would you say to them? What do you wish you would have known before you started your own journey?
Well, actually, my experience is quite similar to their experience about introducing action and activity. So what it was very important for me was an advice that I received from one of my colleagues saying, build a very rough prototype very quickly and hand it to them. Start the conversation with an activity. And I think that's the best thing that you can do, because if you start discussing complex ideas, you are intimidating people. And also, the discussion in the world of the ideas is so abstract, it's so ethereal. But it is very important is to bring the experience. So you sit with your co-design partners and you bring something to do, and then you discuss. They experience it, and then they discuss. And you brainstorm around it, and you talk about something tangible. For me, that is the most important idea around co-design, because that is how you do it. Or that's at least how it worked very well for me with people with dementia.
No, that's fantastic advice, and I'm sure there's people in the room who will benefit from that. And I suppose another added piece of complexity is the fact that yours is a digital solution. So did you come up against any specific challenges, you're nodding, relating to the fact it was a digital solution, it was a target user group with specific needs? How did you get around some of those challenges?
Well, we had many stories about all the many challenges that we have because it was a digital product. But the other day, one of the research assistants that worked a lot during the clinical trial was sharing this anecdote, and we were all laughing. So it was about one of the participants in this study who was having difficulties with charging the tablet, and called to the office and spoke with this person, with this colleague of mine, and said, listen, we are unable to charge the tablet. What shall we do? And she tried to do the troubleshooting by phone, but they didn't manage to solve it. So she decided to travel to the home of this participant. And when she arrived and she asked to see the charger, she realized that it was folded. And they didn't realize that they had to unfold it to plug it. So this is an example of how you cannot assume that people know how to use these devices. Doesn't matter that everybody knows what a tablet is, but the real experience with it. And we have many anecdotes of this kind. Some people didn't have internet at home, so we provided internet, and we showed them how to switch it on and off. And we have to support the implementation of all these things to enable users to use it. And also we have to train people on how to use the app, because it was an app that we were developing. So we provided training to the person with dementia and also the relative who was supporting the person through the study. So, yes.
Yeah, and training's key, isn't it? It's making sure that everyone's on a level playing field when they're entering those activities.
And they all learn how to use a tablet. So the curve of learning for all of them who had dementia was pretty impressive.
Fantastic. And another digital solution that we've heard about today is Holly Health. And there's an interesting idea and conversation around personalized healthcare services, the use of AI, the use of personal data. Were there any kind of concerns that your target user group had around the use of their personal data?
Yes. So yeah, we observed actually people take a lot of time reading the terms and conditions and privacy policy, something that we should all do probably. Yeah, our users were taking 15 minutes, reading everything, asking questions, which is great. I mean, we were pleased at the end. They were kind of satisfied with what we had put there and with the way we protect their data, because we take GDPR very seriously. But what we decided to do was to take the key elements of that and reassure people in as many places as we can that we are not sharing any identifiable data with anyone unless we ask otherwise. So if they are happy to share their story as one of our kind of user stories, then that's great. But when we talk about outcomes, it's all aggregated data, nothing identifiable, not personalized or personal information. So they get, it's, you know, it's reassuring, and that's what they want to hear and know.
Yeah, and it's a genuine concern that a lot of us
course.
share.
Yeah.
So we are 2 minutes over, but I'm going to be looking at somebody who's going to get angry at me soon. I've got one question that I want to ask to all of you. Could I want everyone in the room to kind of have some key takeaways? So we've, in 1 minute, answers from all of you. If you could give one piece of advice to innovators who are just at the beginning of their co-design journey, what would that be? We'll start with Daniela.
Never assume anything. We all have biases, and we tend to think, oh, obviously we all think that. That's easy enough. Like everyone will understand that. But never assume. Always work with the people. Ask questions. If you're not sure, ask the person who's going through the challenge, the person that you're trying to help. Yeah. What do they think, and how can I make this work with you and for you?
Fantastic. Ada?
Mine is create a very rough prototype of what you want to develop as soon as possible and just put it in the hands of the people you want to work with and start the conversation doing an activity. That's the best advice that was given to me.
Fantastic.
I would say be prepared for an emotional journey. It's a transformational approach, not only for the people you're working with, but if done well for yourself as well. So I talk about commitment and skin in the game.
Right.
Yeah. 4 words: open, accept, and collaborate. I think this for me is key.
Fantastic advice from everyone, I'm sure you'll agree. I personally don't know one business, one innovator, one researcher that I've talked to who has embarked on a co-design journey and hasn't experienced that magic from having that two-way ongoing dialogue with their end user group. And it's fantastic to see that UKRI have really put it as a central part of the Healthy Aging Challenge. So please thank you Please join me in thanking our fantastic panel, Sarah, Lewis, Ada and Daniela.